All right, everybody, welcome back. We are diving deep today.
And that conflict.
Yeah. Preventing relationship conflict escalation.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think so.
Yeah.
So we are taking excerpts from this text all about conflict resolution strategies.
Very useful.
I think so.
Yeah, for everyone.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it talks about this idea, and I think this is great. This is like the foundation. It's called constructive conflict management.
Okay.
And it's basically expressing yourself without blame.
Right. And so much of what we see, when we're talking to couples or just even, observing conflict in the world is that people immediately go to blame.
Right.
So it's like,
We did this.
yeah, you did this, it's your fault, as opposed to like, I'm feeling this way
Right.
because of this thing that happened.
Exactly. And they talk about using I statements
Yes.
as a really good way to kind of reframe those accusations into something that's a little bit more productive.
Exactly. So instead of saying you always leave your clothes on the floor,
Oh, that's a good one.
you would say, I feel disrespected when I see your clothes on the floor.
Oh, that's so much better.
Or I feel overwhelmed when I'm the only one who picks up the clothes.
Right.
So you're talking about your own feelings and needs, and you're also connecting it to a specific behavior,
Right.
but you're not attacking the person.
Right. You're not saying you're a bad person.
Exactly.
You're just saying, this is how I feel.
This is the impact of that behavior.
Okay. I like it. And it talks about managing stress during conflicts,
Yes.
which is so important.
Absolutely, because when we're flooded with stress hormones,
Oh, yeah.
it impairs our ability to think clearly.
Yeah. It's like you can't even access the rational part of your brain.
Exactly. You're just reacting
Yes.
from that fight, flight, or freeze response.
Right. So how do we manage stress in the moment? Like when you're in it and you're feeling that heat?
Yeah. Well, one of the best things you can do is just take a pause.
Okay.
Like if you notice that your heart is racing, your palms are sweating, you're
Right.
starting to get really defensive. Yeah.
Just say, you know what? I need a break.
Okay.
I need to step away for a few minutes. I need to calm down.
Yeah.
And we can come back to this when we're both in a better headspace.
And they actually talk about avoiding absolute statements,
Oh, yeah.
which I think is huge.
Huge, because when you say things like, you always or you never,
You make me.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, it's probably not even true.
Right.
But it also puts the other person on the defensive.
Immediately.
Yeah, and it just escalates the conflict.
Yeah, because they're like, no, I don't.
Exactly.
Always, or, whatever.
So instead of saying you always interrupt me,
You could say,
I felt frustrated when I was interrupted earlier.
yeah.
Could we, work on letting each other finish our thoughts?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, it feels so much more collaborative.
Much more.
Yeah.
And, another thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is that sometimes these conflicts are actually masking deeper fears.
Huh. So it might look like you're arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes, but really underneath that, you might be afraid of not feeling loved or appreciated.
Wow.
Or, maybe one partner is afraid of feeling trapped or controlled.
Okay.
So if we can start to recognize those underlying fears
Yeah.
and communicate them to each other,
Communicate them, yeah.
then we can start to address the real issues.
Right, because otherwise you're just like arguing about the dishes.
Exactly. And it's never really about the dishes.
It's not about the dishes.
Oh,
Okay, I like
okay.
that. Okay, so then this text goes on to talk about some really interesting techniques for managing conflict. One of them is called the couples dialogue strategy.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever heard of this?
I have.
Okay, so can you break it down for us? Because it involves mirroring, validation, and empathy.
Yes. So mirroring is basically just reflecting back what you've heard your partner say.
Yeah.
So if your partner says, I'm so stressed out about work, you could mirror that by saying, it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed with work right now.
Okay, just repeating back.
Just reflecting back.
Okay.
And it shows that you're listening.
Right.
And that you're trying to understand.
And that you care.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then validation is about acknowledging the validity of your partner's feelings, even if you don't agree with them.
Oh, okay, so you're not saying I agree with you, but you're saying...
I understand why you would feel that way, given the circumstances.
Okay, got it.
So, for example, if your partner says, I'm really upset that you forgot my birthday.
Oh, that's a bad one.
You could validate that by saying, I understand why you're upset.
Yeah.
I would feel hurt, too, if I were in your shoes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But you don't have to say, I'm a terrible person. I should have never forgotten your birthday.
Right, you're not agreeing, you're just validating.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what about empathy?
So empathy is taking it a step further and actually connecting with your partner's emotions on a deeper level.
Oh.
So you might say something like, I can see that you're really hurting right now, or I can feel your sadness.
Okay.
And it's about really trying to step into their shoes and feel what they're feeling.
Wow, that's hard.
It can be challenging.
Yeah, because, when you're in a conflict, you're so focused on your own perspective,
Exactly.
but to actually try to shift and see it from their side,
It's a skill.
yeah, it's a real skill.
Yeah,
Okay, I like this couple's dialogue strategy.
it's powerful.
Yeah, it reminds me of actually a situation with my friend.
Okay.
Um, she was venting about her job, and I was like, "Oh, you should do this, and you should do that, and here's some solutions." And she was like, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen."
Right.
And it was such a good reminder that sometimes people just need to be heard.
Absolutely.
And, that's part of this active listening thing that the text talks about.
Yes, active listening is so crucial in any relationship.
And we talk about it all the time on this show.
We do because it's so important.
But it's one of those things that's like easier said than done.
Right, because it's more than just hearing the words that are coming out of your partner's mouth.
Right. It's not just like waiting for your turn to speak.
Exactly. It's about really paying attention to what they're saying, to
Yeah.
their body language, to their tone of voice.
Uh-huh.
And it's about using those techniques, like restating and clarifying and reflecting and encouraging and validating.
Okay. So break down those techniques for us.
Okay, so restating is simply repeating back what you've heard in your own words.
Okay.
So you might say something like, so what you're saying is you feel like you're not getting enough help around the house.
Got it.
And clarifying is about asking questions to make sure you understand what they mean.
Okay.
So you might say, can you give me an example of what you mean by that? Or what would help you feel more supported?
Okay.
And then reflecting is about mirroring back the emotions that you're seeing in your partner.
Okay.
So you might say, you seem really frustrated right now, or I can see that this is really upsetting you. And encouraging is about showing your partner that you're interested in what they have to say.
Uh-huh.
So you might use verbal cues like, or okay, or tell me more.
Got it.
And then validating is about acknowledging the validity of their feelings, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's about saying, I understand why you feel that way, or that makes sense to me.
Okay, so this active listening thing is like a whole skill set.
It is.
Yeah. But when someone really listens to you, how does that make you feel?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Right.
It feels so good to feel heard and understood.
It's like the best feeling.
Yeah, and it can completely transform a conflict.
Yeah, because you're not so defensive anymore.
Exactly, because you feel like, okay, this person gets me.
They get me.
Yeah, and they're on my side even if they don't agree with me.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Okay, and then the text goes on to talk about understanding each other's perspective,
Right.
which is so important, but also so challenging.
Yeah, because we tend to get stuck in our own heads.
Right.
And we assume that our perspective is the right one.
And we make assumptions.
Yes, we jump to conclusions, we make absolute statements.
And we're not really curious about their experience.
Exactly. We're just trying to prove our own point.
Right. And so how do we get out of that trap?
Well, the first step is just to be aware of it.
Okay.
Like, notice when you're getting defensive, when you're making assumptions, when you're not really listening.
Uh-huh.
And then you can start to challenge those thoughts and say, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let me try to see this from their perspective.
Okay.
What might be going on for them that I'm not seeing?
And it's about asking questions
Yes.
instead of making statements.
Instead of assuming,
Right.
ask clarifying questions.
And even that, like, the way you ask the question can really change things.
Oh, absolutely.
So instead of saying, why would you do that?
Right.
You could say, can you help me understand why you did that?
Exactly, because one is accusatory
Yeah.
and the other is coming from a place of curiosity.
Right. Okay. And then this leads into this idea of creating a safe space for open communication, which the text talks a lot about.
Because if we don't feel safe to share our feelings and needs,
Yeah.
then those issues are just going to fester and build up.
And explode.
Exactly. And it's so much harder to resolve conflicts when they've been brewing for a long time.
Right.
So it's important to create an environment where both partners feel comfortable speaking their truth.
Right. And so how do we create that safe space?
Well, first of all, timing is important.
Okay.
Don't try to have a difficult conversation when you're both exhausted or stressed.
Yeah.
Choose a time when you can both be present and focused,
Right.
and then create a physical space that feels safe and comfortable.
Okay.
Like maybe dim the lights, put on some music, make some tea,
Oh, yeah.
and then use non-threatening language.
Okay.
Like avoid those you statements and focus on I statements and really listen to your partner without interrupting.
Yeah. Give them space to share.
Exactly. And then you can share your perspective.
Right.
But it's important to create that safe space first.
Right. So they feel heard, and then you can also feel heard.
Exactly.
Okay. I like it. This text also talks about managing frustration,
Yes.
which is a big one.
Because frustration is a normal human emotion,
Yeah.
but it can be really destructive if we don't manage it effectively.
Right. And how do we manage it effectively?
Well, the first step is to recognize when you're feeling frustrated.
Okay.
What are your physical sensations?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are your behaviors?
Yeah.
And then once you've recognized that you're feeling frustrated,
Yeah.
you can start to communicate it to your partner
Communicate it
in a healthy way.
in a healthy way.
So instead of saying, you're driving me crazy,
Yeah.
you could say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now because,
that?
and then explain why you're feeling frustrated.
Okay. And this is where that self-awareness comes in.
Yes.
Because you have to kind of know your patterns.
Exactly.
Like, what are your go-to reactions when you're frustrated?
Right. Do you tend to withdraw? Do you tend to get angry? Do you tend to get passive aggressive? Once you know your patterns,
Yeah.
then you can start to choose different behaviors.
Choose healthier behaviors.
Exactly.
Okay. And I think this kind of all culminates in this idea of assertive communication,
Yes.
which the text emphasizes as a really important skill for conflict resolution.
And for life in general.
Yeah. So what is assertive communication?
So assertive communication is about expressing your opinions and needs directly,
Okay.
honestly, and respectfully,
Okay.
while also taking responsibility for yourself.
Okay.
So it's not about being aggressive or passive aggressive.
Right.
It's about finding that middle ground.
That sweet spot.
Yeah, where you're standing up for yourself,
Uh-huh.
but you're also being mindful of the other person's feelings.
Okay. I like it. So it's like you're not a doormat, but you're also not a bulldozer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or somewhere in between.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but I think there's a common thread here. And it's this idea of respectful, open communication.
Yes.
Like that's the foundation for resolving conflict in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
And it's about creating a dynamic where both people feel heard, understood, and validated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you're listening to this, I want you to think about which of these techniques resonated with you the most.
Yeah.
And what's one small step you can take today to try it out in your own relationships?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's about taking action.
It is, because knowledge is power, but only if we use it.
I love it. Okay, everybody, that's our deep dive for today.
Until next time.
Happy communicating.
Bye.
Bye.